Hey, how's everyone doing? This is Lemon Lattice, and I'm going to show you today how to do an AK by numbers template from a file that you already have. So let's get started. This one was sent to me by Tony, so thank you, Tony, for that. And this is fresh. I'm just starting this here so that you guys can see exactly what I would do to do this. I don't want to give you the edited version. I want you to see all the steps. So import that. Right away I can see we need to align this. Let's rotate that into position. Now that was already pretty close. I just had to change the planes a bit because this came out of, I believe, Willowwood software, uh, Omega. So it was already in alignment, and then it looks like a socket was built. So let's actually get rid of the socket part and just turn this into a outer surface shape. So edit, generate face groups. You can see that's good. So let's do this, accept that. And this is moving pretty slow. So yeah, we can see down here we have 317,000 triangles. So let's look at that. It's pretty heavy on the distal end, so we'll reduce all that in a minute here. This isn't bad. We're gonna leave that. Let's get rid of this inner first and then come back to that. So double click there, double click there. You can see we don't have this inner edge, so you can either just go through and select that, or you could hold and roll your mouse wheel, which I'll show you here. Hold control. Yeah, with how many triangles, it doesn't want to do it fast, but hold control, roll up. And it did not go over the edge. If it did, if you got too much, you can control double click these face groups that you don't want, and they'll go away. So we've got all of our outer. Let's hit I to invert and delete. Let's get rid of that. And we're going to leave the top open while we work on this. That's okay. Now that we've got this, let's go back to wireframe and let's clean this up. So sculpt, brushes, adaptive reduce. Let's go large size, low strength, and just start dragging around there. I'm gonna hit Control Z. I don't want it to be quite that big as a result, so we'll turn the strength down a little more. That'll be good. And just work your way around there. So now you can see we're at 49,000 triangles, down from 317. So much more manageable for the software there. And the rest of this is all really nice and clean because of what it came out of on the export side initially. So this, let's turn wireframe back off. You can see that's a lock, probably a Bulldog 3 Gen A lock, I would guess. And you can see we've got the taper there from a locking liner, so that'd be the umbrella. So we don't really want to mess with that taper. We want to keep that ridge around there, keep that taper, but we do want to get rid of the lock for this. So if you were to scan a plaster model or a foam carving, you may not get this. Now, if you scan a foam carving and this was built in, you might have to do this step. But if you scan a plaster model, you might not need to do this step of deleting the lock. This is good. It'll show you how to do these things. Select that. Let's delete it. And then let's grab this edge. Let's come out to about there and do an erase and fill. And that's going to give us control of this shape. That looks pretty good. And then we want to clean up this part. And let's not touch here. So we just want to clean up what's highlighted and smooth that. And then we're just going to pick the combination here between smoothing scale and constraint rings that gives us the taper we want. So typically lower constraint rings are going to be more linear, where higher are going to be more curved. You can see we get to a really flat taper there. And as we go up, we lose that. So being that it's an umbrella, let's actually keep that. Let's keep that flat taper. It looks like that flows off that edge good. And let's just go with that. Let's actually just smooth out this little bit here. And then I don't want to go past this ring here, but let's just do one more quick smooth just at a 4, just to blend the lines that we just made. For the wireframe, you can see some of that. That's okay. We can leave that like that. So that's our base model. Now we would have our trim lines. You can kind of see where they're at, and we'll define those more here as we go. Let's save as. All right. So we're going to make a whole library. That's the plan here. Is I'm going to make a library of these models. So anyone that wants to send me one, I can make this and add it to the library, and it'll be an open source library for other people to take and use. So what we want to do is let's pull in a plane, bring it under the model, and then grab that green triangle to slide it on that plane. And let's just bring this, let's just arbitrarily put it down here right now. That'll show us how to extend a model later. View, show object browser, and we'll rename that. We can turn it off for now. And then let's bring another mesh mix, and let's bring in the cube and start shrinking this down to a more manageable size. So as I do that, you can see on the left side of the screen which dimensions are moving. So let's go size, take that down to 10 millimeters and 10 millimeters, and let's call this, let's say we're going to have a 280, let's go 310, let's go longer, 310 millimeter length. So this will be our length gauge, just like if you were measuring from the distal end of the ischial tuberosity to the end of the limb. And then let's move that into place. And what I'm aiming for here is to put the top of that where that length gauge would be, and have it kind of just be half in, half out. So if we're going to say that that point right there would be distal end of the ischial tuberosity. Now this is going to be obviously up to you as the prosthetist, as the one working with these models, where you intend the ischial tuberosity to be on your model. That looks good. So you can see the one Tony sent me is less than 310. So that's good because we'll extend this model out, being that it's an AK by numbers template. And what I want to do is take that length gauge and duplicate it and then transform. And let's pull this over here to the lateral side where we're going to say we're going to take some measurements. So trying to mimic what we would do in the clinic. Now, make sure you don't move this up and down. So stay away from the green arrow and box. But you can use the green triangle to move it on that plane. You can use the blue and red are fine. You get that in position where you would basically take your measurements. And what I want to do is shrink this down to, oh, actually, we skipped a step here. So let's back up. Let's keep that Control Z a bunch of times. Keep that where it's at. We need to make it 50 millimeters here. And then we need to slide it up back into position. Now, once we're there, now we can bring it out. All right. So accept that. So that is from 0 to 2 inches. And then we're going to edit, duplicate, and immediately create a new one, transform. And we're going to drop that down. So green arrow, you can see translate Y is moving. So minus 50 millimeters is just about 2 inches. And now we've got 2 to 4 inches. Just repeat that a few times. So duplicate, transform, minus 50 on the Y. Another one. And a couple more times here. All right. So we've got several of these laid out. They're all individual sections. So what we're going to do, click one, hold control, and click all of those. And this menu automatically pops up. Hit combine. Now you can see they're broken out into color, and they're all 6 different parts of one file now. So you can turn it all on and off together. So that is now what you can use to get your measurement levels. And then let's come out to the left. And this is where you might want to do orthographic or perspective view. As long as you stay on that plane, it shouldn't matter that you're not going to get off. So just look straight at the left side view or right, depending on what side model you have. I like perspective. Let's stay there right now. So sculpt, brushes, inflate, and then do a relatively small one. What we're looking to do is make dots here. We're not going to do it at 0 level because we don't need that measurement. We're going to start at the 2 inch, and we have to go back onto our base model. So click that, sculpt, brushes, and we're going to just come right here and just hold down on that for a little bit. Now that's not very big. Control Z. Let's turn the strength up. Just want something that's going to be easy to see later when we take it into the other one. Too big. Something like that should be good. Put a handful of dots on here. So 2, 4, 6, and 8 inches. And now let's come back and export that. As an STL. And then we're going to open up Scandifit. So it's fit.scandi.co. Over here to the right, new upload, model. And let's pull that in, click millimeters, because that's what I work in Meshmixer, and upload. It's going to tell you that. Just hit OK. So now you've got your model. You've got a plane. So what we want to do in this software is go, you can rotate around, change your view here. So left click's going to rotate. Right click will pan on your mouse. So left click, get yourself in a good position to see those dots. Transform model, translate, and then grab your arrow and drag. So let's start at the most distal one. Line it up. Measure, calculate perimeter. Come back, translate. Move it to the next one. You can see it's leaving a ring behind. Measure, so that's the green ring. Calculate perimeter, and we're just going to do this step at each of those levels. And then these are in meters, so whatever you want to work in, you can do that there. I'm going to go centimeters, and then I'm just going to write these down. So right now I'm at 2, 4, 6, and 8, and 61, 59, 57, and 49 as my circumference is. So let's kick back over to Meshmixer. And those are just going to be for reference. So that's kind of what our base model is. Now you can come in and set those. You could do it by percentage and figure out what you want those to be. Maybe instead of 69, you want that your upper one on your model to be like 600, 580, 560, 540 as far as millimeters. So 60, 58, 56, 54 centimeters, and just keep that as your model so that you know what your model size is. And then you could have different sized templates and models to pick the one that's closest to what you want to start with. That's the great thing with these CAD tools. You can have an infinitely large library of different shapes and sizes to be as close to what you want to start with. So to work with this, what we're going to do is let's edit, duplicate that base model here, turn off that one. We don't need, well, we do need this. So let's now turn on our plane and say we want to be now, what do we call that? 310. So we want our model to be longer than what our initial was. We want it to be 310. So we're going to move our plane down to the end of that 310 length gauge. Then we're going to come to our model and select, drag across somewhere in the distal half, maybe even the distal third, basically wherever you want this to change, because we're going to do a deform, soft transform. We've seen this tool in some of the other videos. Drop that fall off down. You can see when we move this, we're just lengthening this model. And you can switch your view. So right there. So we're at now our 310 length. And then as you start to drag this up, that's going to be basically your blend zone. If you're used to some of these things on like a scan and merge and some of the Willowwood software, those kind of things, this is basically setting your blend zone based on your fall off. So I like to go as high as I can pretty much without getting into what would be my more proximal anatomy. Like I don't want to change my trim lines. So something like that. So now I've got a 310 millimeter length model. We can turn those off. We can turn our plane off. And now we want to work on changing the size. So you can see here, some of these got off because that's where we blended those out. So the 2 inches still good. But these ones, what we're going to do is reset these. So select, deform, smooth. Just clean those up and get yourself a better starting point. And then sculpt and inflate again, and let's just rebuild those. And now we're going to come in here and go edit, plane cut. And this is important to go slice, keep both, and no fill. We're going to cut between the dots. So at the center of each bar, we're going to do a cut because we want our new measurements to be across that. You'll see this in a second, except, so it's still one model. It's just now split into 2 sections that you can independently select. So do that working down your model. You have to change those each time to slice, keep both, and fill type no fill. Drop down. So it's not the fastest, not the most straightforward workflow, but it is a free way to do what otherwise would cost you probably hundreds of dollars a month, depending on how many AKs you do. This might be worth doing it. And I'm going to leave the last one. I don't want to create an extra blend. We're going to let all that be together. What you could do is, if you had a certain size and shape umbrella that you knew you wanted to keep, you could do a final cut there above your umbrella so that you're not going to be touching that and you're not going to be distorting the distal shape of your liner, which does not change limb to limb necessarily. So you could even have a model for each liner type. You could have an OSER 36 and an OSER 45 millimeter or centimeter liner model for each one, and just keep your distal end and don't touch it, because it does not change from one limb to the next really. But in this case, Control Z, cancel. I'm not going to do that on this one. So select, and what we want to do is separate out each of these now. So let's start here. We're going to keep this one as number 1. So select the first ring, edit, separate, which you can see the hotkey here is Y. And now that has just created a separate piece. So click back to your base model, select Y, back to your base, select Y, and one last time. So you've now got independently selectable zones across your different measurements. So the reason we cut in between is because when we take our measurement, I want that to be in the middle of the piece I'm about to resize. So we wrote down earlier that our measurements were, on this one, we were at 61 centimeters circumference here at the 2-inch level. Sorry, up here at the 2-inch level, which is model number 1. So let's say the new model is going to be longer and skinnier. So that needs to be 600 millimeters and not 610 millimeters. So let's just do some math. So that needs to be 0.98 relative to the regular size being 1. So select that, edit, transform. We're going to go scale X and scale Z. So 0.98. You can see it shrunk it across that plane. And then we're going to do the Z plane, which is left and right here. You can see we've now got that shrunk all the way around evenly inset from that. And let's just make up some numbers here. So that one was 0.98. Let's say this one was going to be 0.972. You can see it's now shrunk in even a little more from that. Maybe we had an area here that did not shrink as much. Let's keep that one at 0.985. And back to 0.97. And maybe our distal end's a little bulbous compared to the rest, and that's only 0.99. Now we've got all these different rings at different sizes. What we need to do is just blend these all together. So again, just like we did on that bar earlier, we're going to combine these all back together. So select them all, combine, and now they are independent face groups of one model. So do the select, drop down to a low size. You can see what we're aiming for here when we select is to grab one of these triangles along an edge and double click it, and that's going to select that whole rim around. So we're going to do that on two pieces next to each other. Then do edit, join, and that'll blend those together. Except hit escape to clear out, and then move to the next one. Sometimes it can be hard to find those if you're having trouble actually clicking one. Like if you click a little off, it'll select the whole area. So if you're having trouble ever finding them, just turn on your wireframe and you can grab those right there. Join. And just work your way up. You can see over here where we blended earlier, things are different, but that's okay. We're going to do a global blend on this in a minute. This one's where it could be tough. If you didn't have this turned on, you might be sitting here clicking this. But when we have that on, you can see we got to get that little one. So we are now rebuilt. We're all back to one piece. All those have been joined. And then double click all three of those. Hold control and roll your mouse wheel, or hold control while holding control, do right click up and down. And we're just going to blend out that whole zone. Maybe you don't want to get up into here as much, so control and undo that. Control left click to unselect, and then we're going to do a deform, smooth. And this is where you can sit here and actually just drag this back and forth and watch and kind of pick where you think this should be. Let's turn that off to get a better view. And then hit enter when you're done. So if you ever don't like it, you can control Z, go back and just keep working on it again. You can change views. The reason this went away earlier was because I clicked on something else while that was still open. So if you do that, like say I click over there, or you might lose things. What you can always do is hit Control Z and just Control Z back to where you wanted to be. Even there, like right now, I can't click my menu. My normal menu that would come up is gone. So escape, Control Z, it's going to get me back to where I want to be. Select. So sometimes you have to do, and I'm not selected, so that was the problem. See, now Control Z. Now I'm back, and that menu came up to deform. So if you've ever accidentally clicked off on something or gone too far, just Control Z is one of your best friends in Meshmixer. So now we've got that. Come in, we're gonna select that, smooth those areas out. And then Control A, modify clear face group if you just want to get a look at everything together. You can see we are now down to our length. We're smaller, so this is our original model. Turn the new one on and off. You can see that we are longer. And then if we have this one selected and we do a edit plane cut, it'll give you a good view real quick. You can see we are smaller across that. So that is an AK by numbers to your template. And then you could come in and do your different tools. Maybe you have a template that you like and that's all you wanted was to get that right there. Or you could come in and start actually making modifications to that. But that's how you start. That's how you make a template. So if you want me to make some and add them to a library, send them over to me. That's Derick, Derick, at limandlattice.com, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you my email and you can send me files, and let's make a library, an open source library for everyone to use. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.